The kitchen light cast harsh shadows across Marcus Williams' face as he stood by the counter, his tie loosened after a long day at the firm. At 42, he carried the weight of responsibility like a second skin. Across from him, his wife Diane still wore her nursing scrubs, her arms crossed in that way that told him this conversation was about to go somewhere painful. Jasmine left that science project until the last minute again. "Diane," Marcus said, his voice controlled but edged with frustration, "the girl is 15 years old. When are you going to hold her accountable?" Diane's eyes flashed. "She's been stressed with cheerleading tryouts. You don't understand the pressure these girls are under." "Pressure? I'm talking about responsibility." Marcus felt his voice rising despite himself. "And Maya? She's been skipping her online tutoring sessions." "I checked the log." "You checked the log?" Diane's voice climbed an octave. "You mean you've been spying on my daughters?" "Our daughters, Diane. We've been married for 6 years. They're our daughters." The words hung between them like a challenge. Diane's face hardened in a way Marcus had never seen before, not even during their worst arguments. "No, Marcus," she said coldly. "They're my daughters. You want to play tough love, Daddy? Then handle your own son. Last time I checked, Darius had a D in algebra and smelled like weed when he came home Tuesday night." The accusation hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. His 17-year-old son, his pride and joy, the boy who'd been through hell when his mother died 8 years ago. "What did you just say?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice dangerous in its softness. "You heard me. Don't scold my daughters when you can't even take care of your own." The silence that followed was deafening. Somewhere upstairs a door closed softly. They'd been heard. Marcus stared at the woman he'd fallen in love with at a hospital charity event, the woman who'd brought laughter back into his and Darius's life after years of grief. Now he was looking at a stranger. "Is that really how you see this family?" His voice broke on the last word. Diane's face softened for just a moment, regret flickering across her features. But pride or hurt or something else entirely kept her silent. Marcus picked up his keys from the counter. "I need some air." He walked out, and the front door closed with a devastating quietness that somehow felt worse than if he'd slammed it. Diane stood alone in the kitchen, her hands trembling, wondering how they'd gotten here. Marcus sat in his car on the driveway, engine running but going nowhere. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles ached. His phone buzzed. Terence, his younger brother. He ignored it. Then a text from his sister, Nina. He put the phone face down on the passenger seat and finally put the car in reverse. 20 minutes later, he found himself sitting in the parking lot of Piedmont Park, watching joggers pass under the streetlights. This was where he'd proposed to Diane 6 years ago, under the big oak tree near the lake. He'd been so sure then, sure that they could blend their families, sure that love was enough, sure that Darius would get the mother figure he desperately needed, and that Jasmine and Maya would benefit from having a father in the house again. His phone rang. Darius. Marcus's heart clenched. "Dad, where are you?" "Just driving, son. I'll be back soon. I heard you guys fighting." Darius's voice was quiet, controlled. Too controlled for a 17-year-old. "I heard what she said." Marcus closed his eyes. "D. We're just working through some things. Is it true? About the algebra?" "We'll talk about it when I get home." "And the other thing she said," Darius's voice cracked. "I'm not, Dad. I'm not doing that. I swear to God. I believe you, son. We'll figure this out." After he hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness of his car and let himself cry for the first time in years. Not just about tonight, but about everything. About his first wife, Patricia, who died of cancer when Darius was 9. About the years of single fatherhood. About meeting Diane and thinking God had given him a second chance. About the look on Darius's face when he'd introduced him to Jasmine and Maya as his new sisters. About those words, "Take care of your own." Back at the house, Diane climbed the stairs slowly. She knocked on Jasmine's door first. "Come in," came the muffled reply. Jasmine sat on her bed, her phone in her lap, but Diane could tell she hadn't been looking at it. At 15, Jasmine looked more like Diane's sister than her daughter, all long limbs and natural beauty. But right now her face was streaked with tears. "Baby," Diane started. "Why did you say that to Marcus?" Jasmine asked. "The thing about Darius not being his responsibility?" "I didn't say that. I said, I heard you, Mom. We all heard you." Jasmine's voice was sharp with anger. "You basically said we're not a real family." "That's not what I meant." Diane sat on the edge of the bed. He was coming at your girl so hard, and I was defending you. By attacking Darius?" "Mom, that's messed up." Jasmine wiped her eyes. "And for the record, I should have started that project earlier. Marcus was right." Diane felt her throat tighten. "Sweetheart, is that what you really think? That it's us versus them?" Before Diane could answer, Jasmine turned away, curling up on her side facing the wall. Diane sat there for another moment, then left, closing the door softly behind her. Maya's door was cracked open. At 13, she was smaller than Jasmine, quieter, more sensitive. Diane found her sitting at her desk, pretending to do homework, but her shoulders were shaking. "Maya, baby," Maya turned, her face wet with tears. "Are you and Marcus getting divorced?" The question hit Diane like ice water. "No, honey, no. We just had a fight, a really bad one." Maya's voice was small. "Like before." Diane knew what she meant. Before. When Maya and Jasmine's father, Eric, had walked out 5 years ago, the fights had been epic. Screaming matches that ended with doors slamming and Maya hiding in her closet with her headphones on. "This is different," Diane said, but even she could hear how hollow it sounded. "I like Marcus," Maya whispered. "He helps me with my math homework. He makes those funny voices when he reads my essays. I don't want him to leave." Diane pulled her youngest daughter into her arms and held her while she cried. Over Maya's head, she caught sight of herself in the mirror on the closet door. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Marcus drove for another hour before finally heading home. It was nearly 11 when he pulled into the driveway. The house was mostly dark, except for the porch light and a glow from the upstairs window. Darius's room. He found his son sitting on his bed, algebra textbook open in front of him, working through problems with an intensity that broke Marcus's heart. "You don't have to prove anything to me tonight, Dee," Marcus said from the doorway. Darius looked up, and Marcus saw the fear in his eyes. The same fear he'd seen 8 years ago when they'd come home from the hospital without Patricia. "I'm not doing drugs, Dad, I swear, on Mom's grave." Marcus sat down next to him. "Then why would Diane say that?" "I don't know, maybe." Darius hesitated. "Okay, so Tuesday I went to Jordan's house after practice. His older brother was there with some friends, and yeah, they were smoking. But I didn't, Dad. I left. That's why I came home early, remember?" "You said I was home before dinner." Marcus did remember. Darius had walked in at 5:30, earlier than expected. "Why didn't you tell me about it then?" "I didn't want to snitch on Jordan's brother. But I guess my clothes smelled like it." Darius's voice was pleading. "I threw that hoodie in the wash the next day." Marcus believed him. He'd always been able to tell when Darius was lying, and this wasn't it. "And the algebra?" Darius winced. Yeah, that one's real. I'm struggling with it. The teacher moves too fast, and I didn't want to ask for help because he trailed off. Because what? Because I'm supposed to be the smart one, the one who has it all together, the one who doesn't need anything from anybody. Darius's voice cracked. Just like you, Dad. The words landed like an arrow finding its mark. Marcus put his arm around his son's shoulders. Listen to me. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Your mother taught me that. He squeezed Darius's shoulder. We're going to get you a tutor. A good one. And you're going to bring that grade up because you're capable of it. Not because you have to prove anything. Darius nodded, leaning into his father's embrace the way he used to when he was little. Is Diane going to leave? He asked quietly. I don't know, son. I honestly don't know. Diane was sitting in the dark living room when Marcus came back downstairs. She'd changed out of her scrubs into sweats and one of Marcus's old T-shirts, the one from his law school days. That small detail gave him a sliver of hope. He wasn't smoking, Marcus said, standing in the doorway. He was at a friend's house where others were, but he left. That's why he came home early Tuesday. Diane closed her eyes. Marcus, and the algebra? Yeah, he's struggling. But instead of coming to either of us for help, he's been trying to power through alone because he thinks he has to be perfect. Wonder where he got that from. The barb hit home. Marcus had always been the strong one, the provider, the man who handled everything without complaint. I'm sorry, Diane said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said that. About him being your responsibility, like he's not part of this family, don't you? Marcus moved into the room, sitting in the chair across from her. Diane, I think you do know. I think some part of you has always seen it that way. Your girls. My boy. Your ex-husband's child support. My career, your career. Like we're all just living in the same house, but keeping separate accounts. Diane wanted to protest, but the words died in her throat because he was right. She could feel the truth of it in her bones. I didn't want to do that, she whispered. When we got married, I meant those vows. I meant it when I said we were building a new family. Then what happened? Diane was quiet for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Eric left me with 2 little girls and a mountain of debt. He fought me on child support for years. I had to claw my way back from nothing, Marcus. I had to be both parents. And I got so used to protecting my girls from everything, from everyone that She looked at him with devastation in her eyes. I never let you fully in, not really. Because if I did and you left too, I'm not Eric, Marcus said firmly. I know that. In my head, I know that. But in my heart? She pressed her hand to her chest. There's this scared part of me that's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Still waiting for you to decide it's too hard, that we're too much, that your life was easier before. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You want to know the truth? Some days it was easier before. When it was just me and Dee, I knew the playbook. I knew his moods, his needs, his triggers. I knew how to be his dad. He met her eyes. But you know what I didn't have? Laughter at the dinner table. Maya's terrible jokes. Jasmine teaching Darius the latest dance trends. You falling asleep during movies with your head on my shoulder. A full house. A full heart. Fresh tears spilled down Diane's cheeks. I'm not perfect, Diane. I come on too strong sometimes with the girls. I'm still learning how to be a stepdad. But I'm trying. And when you shut me out, when you draw that line between yours and mine, it makes me feel like I'm failing at the thing that matters most, too. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. It makes me feel like I'm losing another family, Diane stood up and crossed to him, kneeling in front of his chair. She took his hands in hers. "You're not losing us. You're not. I was wrong, Marcus. I was scared and defensive, and I lashed out in the worst way possible." She looked up at him. "Darius is my son, too. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, by commitment. And I need to do better by him. I need to do better by all of us." Marcus pulled her up and into his lap, holding her tight as they both cried. Outside, the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the sky. The next morning was Saturday, and the house woke up slowly, awkwardly. Marcus made pancakes, something he always did on weekends, but the usual chatter was replaced by careful politeness. Darius helped flip them without being asked. Jasmine set the table without her usual complaints about it being Maya's turn. Maya sat quietly, watching everyone like she was waiting for something to explode. Diane came down last, her eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. She'd spent the hours after dawn lying awake, thinking about her first marriage, her divorce, the promises she'd made to herself about protecting her daughters, about how those promises had somehow morphed into walls. "Morning," she said softly. A chorus of quiet mornings responded. Marcus set a plate in front of her, their fingers brushing. That small touch felt monumental. "We need to have a family meeting," Marcus announced, sitting down with his own plate. "All of us. No phones, no distractions. Just us talking." Maya's eyes went wide with worry. Jasmine reached over and squeezed her hand under the table. "It's not bad, baby girl," Diane said quickly. "We just need to clear the air about some things." After breakfast, they gathered in the living room. Marcus and Diane sat together on the couch, a united front. The kids took various chairs, looking uncertain. Marcus started. "Last night your mother and I had a fight. A bad one. And you all heard things that probably scared you, or hurt you, or both. I'm not going to make excuses for what I said," Diane added, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I drew lines that shouldn't exist in this family. I made it sound like we're not all in this together, and that was wrong." Jasmine shifted in her seat. "So are you guys okay now?" "We're working on it," Marcus said honestly. "But this meeting isn't about us making you feel better about our relationship. It's about something bigger. It's about how we function as a family." Darius spoke up, his voice cautious. "You mean like, who has authority over who?" "Partly," Diane said. "Marcus should be able to hold Jasmine and Maya accountable for things like homework and responsibilities. And I should be able to do the same with you, Darius. We can't have it be his kids and my kids. We're all one family." "But sometimes it doesn't feel like that," Jasmine said quietly. Then, bolder, "Sometimes it feels like you guys are playing favorites. Like Mom will always take our side and Marcus will always take Darius's side." The observation hung in the air. Marcus and Diane exchanged a look. "You're right," Marcus admitted, "and that's on us. We've been so worried about not overstepping or not replacing your other parents that we've created these invisible boundaries." Maya's small voice piped up. "I don't want boundaries. I just want us to be normal." "What does normal look like to you, sweetheart?" Diane asked. Like Marcus can tell me to do my homework without you getting mad. And you can help Darius with stuff without it being weird. And we can all just be together without everybody being so careful all the time." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. His 13-year-old stepdaughter had just articulated what he and Diane had been dancing around for 6 years. "Darius," Diane said, turning to face him directly, "I owe you an apology. What I said last night about your father needing to take care of his own, that was cruel and untrue. You're part of this family. You're my son. Maybe I haven't always acted like it, and I'm sorry for that." Darius's jaw tightened. emotion playing across his face. "It's okay." "No, it's not," Diane insisted. It's not," Diane insisted. "And about the weed thing, your dad explained what really happened. I should have asked you first before making accusations. That wasn't fair." "Thanks," Darius said quietly. "Then, and I'm sorry about the algebra grade. I should have asked for help from either of us," Diane emphasized. "You can come to me with that stuff too, you know. I may not be a math whiz, but I can help you find resources. Or we can figure it out together." Something shifted in Darius's expression, a softening, an opening. Marcus turned to Jasmine and Maya. "And I need to work on how I approach things with you too. Sometimes I come across as lecturing instead of guiding. Your mom pointed out that you're dealing with pressures I don't always understand, and she's right. But that doesn't mean accountability goes out the window. It just means we need to communicate better." "I can do better about starting projects earlier," Jasmine offered. "And I should have just told you I was stressed, instead of putting it off and making it worse. And I'll go to my tutoring sessions," Maya added. "I was skipping because the tutor is boring, but I shouldn't have just ditched without saying something." "See," Marcus said, looking at Diane. "They can handle honesty and accountability. We just have to trust them with it." Diane nodded, feeling something inside her chest loosen. "You're right. Can I say something?" Darius asked. When everyone turned to him, he took a deep breath. "I think part of the problem is that we all remember before. Jasmine and Maya remember their dad leaving. I remember my mom dying. And you guys remember your past, marriages." He looked directly at Marcus and Diane. "We're all walking around scared. It's going to fall apart again. So we keep pieces of ourselves separate, just in case." The wisdom in that statement, coming from a 17-year-old, left the adults speechless. "That's," Diane started, then stopped. "That's exactly right, Darius. So maybe we just decide not to do that anymore," Jasmine said. "Like we just decide to be all in. Even if it's scary." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I think that's a beautiful idea, Jas." "Group hug?" Maya asked hopefully. They all laughed, the tension finally breaking, and piled together in the middle of the living room. Marcus held his wife and their 4 children, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like they were truly moving in the same direction. But deciding to be all in was easier said than done. Over the next few weeks, old patterns kept surfacing. Diane caught herself making excuses for Jasmine when Marcus asked about an overdue library book. Marcus felt himself getting defensive when Diane suggested Darius might need to see a therapist to talk about his mom's death. They decided to see a family therapist together, Dr. Sharon Morrison, a black woman in her 50s who specialized in blended families. "She didn't pull punches. You're both carrying trauma," Dr. Morrison said in their second session. "Marcus, you watched your first wife die slowly. You had to be everything for Darius for years. That's made you hyper-competent, but also controlling." Marcus started to protest, then stopped. "She wasn't wrong. And Diane, you were financially and emotionally abandoned by someone who promised to be your partner. That's made you fiercely protective, but also closed off. You don't trust anyone to share the load because the last time you did, he dropped it entirely." Diane blinked back tears. "So what do we do?" "You practice vulnerability. Both of you. Marcus, you let Diane take the lead sometimes, even when you think you know better. Diane, you let Marcus in, even when it scares you. And you both stop parenting from a place of fear." The homework Dr. Morrison gave them was simple but terrifying. Marcus had to stay out of one parenting situation with the girls each week, letting Diane handle it entirely. Diane had to initiate one conversation or activity with Darius each week, something motherly without Marcus facilitating it. The first week, Marcus nearly bit through his tongue when he heard Diane telling Jasmine she could go to a party even though her room was a mess. But he stayed quiet. Turned out Diane had negotiated. The room got cleaned the next morning, and Jasmine followed through, because she'd given her word. Diane's first one-on-one with Darius was awkward. She asked if he wanted to go get ice cream and talk. He'd looked at her like she'd suggested they fly to the moon. Sure? They sat in the ice cream shop, Darius with his usual chocolate, Diane trying a new flavor, and for the first few minutes they ate in silence. This doesn't have to be weird, Diane finally said. It's kind of weird, Darius admitted, but he was smiling. Fair enough. Diane took a breath. I wanted to talk to you about your mom. Darius's smile faded. Why? Because I've been avoiding it for 6 years, and that's not okay. Diane met his eyes. I never knew Patricia, but I know she was an amazing woman because she raised an amazing kid. And I think maybe you're worried that if you get close to me, it somehow erases her or betrays her memory. Darius's eyes filled with tears. He looked away, trying to hide it. But here's the thing, Darius. Love isn't a finite resource. You loving me as a stepmom, or even as a mom, doesn't mean you love your real mom any less. She'll always be your mom. I'm not trying to replace her. Diane reached across the table and gently touched his hand. But I'd like to be someone you can count on too. Someone who shows up for you. Someone you don't have to have your guard up around. A tear slipped down Darius's cheek. I do miss having a mom, he whispered. But I feel guilty saying that. You shouldn't. She'd want you to have people who love you. She'd want you to have a full life, not one frozen in grief. They talked for another hour, and when they came home, Marcus took one look at his wife and son and knew something fundamental had shifted. 3 months later, Jasmine won a spot on the varsity cheerleading squad. The whole family showed up to her first game, Marcus included, wearing a shirt Jasmine had decorated with glitter letters that said, "Cheer Dad." He looked ridiculous and didn't care. "That's my girl," he shouted when Jasmine hit a perfect basket toss. Diane laughed beside him, linking her arm through his. The following week, Darius brought home a B+ on his algebra test. His new tutor, arranged by Diane through contacts at the hospital, was working wonders. Diane had the test hung on the refrigerator before Darius could protest. "Mom, that's so corny," he said, but he was grinning. Mom, he'd called her Mom. Diane felt her eyes well up. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. Maya's tutoring sessions improved once they switched to a different tutor, one who made the sessions more interactive. Marcus had found him through his firm's community outreach program. Maya came home excited about fractions of all things. The house started to feel different, lighter. The kids joked more freely. Discipline became a united front, with Marcus and Diane checking in with each other, but not undermining each other. They weren't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still old wounds that ached, but they were trying. They were all in. The real test came 6 months after that pivotal argument. Diane's ex-husband Eric resurfaced, wanting to reconnect with Jasmine and Maya after 3 years of barely any contact. He'd remarried, gotten sober, and was trying to make amends. Diane's first instinct was to say no, to protect her girls from more disappointment. She'd made it this far without him. They didn't need him now. But Marcus challenged her. Is it about protecting them, or is it about protecting yourself? He asked gently one night after the girls were asleep. What's the difference? The difference is whether you're making this decision based on what's actually best for them, or based on your anger at him. Marcus took her hand. I'm not saying you don't have a right to be angry. You do. The man abandoned his family. But Jasmine is 16 now. Maya's 14. They're old enough to make their own choices about whether they want a relationship with their father. What if he hurts them again? Then we'll be here to help them through it. Together. Marcus pulled her close. You're not alone anymore, Diane. You don't have to guard the gate by yourself. Diane eventually agreed to let Eric meet with the girls, but only if it was supervised at first, and only if the girls wanted to. She sat them down and explained that their father wanted to see them. Maya's response was immediate. I don't want to. Jasmine's was more complicated. Can I think about it? Of course, Diane said. Whatever you decide, we support you. Over the next week, Jasmine wrestled with a decision. She talked to Diane, to Marcus, to her school counselor, and to Darius, who'd offered his perspective as someone who'd lost a parent. I think you should at least hear what he has to say, Darius told her one evening when they were both doing homework at the kitchen table. Not because he deserves it, but because you might need closure. You might need to see who he is now as a person, not as this ghost you're angry at. You sound like a therapist, Jasmine said, but she was smiling. I've been going to one, Darius admitted. It helps. In the end, Jasmine decided to meet Eric for coffee, with Marcus and Diane waiting in the car outside. It was awkward and emotional, and Eric cried more than once as he apologized for the years he'd missed, the child support he'd fought, the promises he'd broken. Jasmine listened, and when she came back to the car, she was crying too. How do you feel? Diane asked, fighting every instinct to bash Eric right then and there. I don't know, Jasmine said honestly, but I think I needed to hear him say he was sorry, even if I'm not ready to have him back in my life yet. That's fair, Marcus said from the driver's seat. You get to set the pace. You get to decide what this relationship looks like, if anything. Maya never did want to meet with Eric, and everyone respected that choice. Eric sent cards on birthdays and holidays, and sometimes Jasmine responded. Sometimes she didn't. It was messy and imperfect, but it was real. The bigger test came later that year when Marcus's firm offered him a partnership. It was everything he'd worked for, the culmination of 20 years of dedication. There was just one catch. It would require significantly more hours, more travel, more time away from home. 10 years ago, he would have taken it without question. 5 years ago, even. But now, sitting at the dinner table with his family, he found himself hesitating. What's wrong, Dad? Darius asked. Isn't this what you wanted? It is, Marcus said slowly, but I'm not sure it's what we need right now. As a family, what do you mean? Diane asked. Marcus looked around at the faces of his wife and their 4 children. The partnership means I'd be working even longer hours, missing more dinners, more games, more moments. And we've fought so hard to become a real family. I don't want to sacrifice that for a title. But it's your dream, Jasmine protested. You've talked about making partners since I met you. Dreams change, Marcus said simply. Or maybe the dream expands to include more than just career success. Diane reached over and took his hand. What if we figured it out together? What if we adjusted how we do things to make room for both your career and our family time? Over the next few days, they had a series of family meetings about what a partnership would mean. They created schedules, delegated responsibilities, talked about priorities. The kids stepped up, offering to take on more chores and homework accountability. Diane adjusted her nursing shifts where she could. Marcus ultimately took the partnership, but on his terms. He negotiated for more flexibility, for protected family time, for the ability to say no to projects that would take him away from home for extended periods. You're going to hurt your advancement, one of the senior partners warned him. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but I'll have a family that knows I chose them. and that's worth more to me than any corner office. 2 years after that pivotal argument in the kitchen, the Williams family looked completely different. Darius had graduated high school and was attending Morehouse College, Marcus's alma mater, studying computer science. He came home every few weeks, and when he did, Diane always made his favorite meal, her famous smothered chicken. Jasmine was a senior, applying to colleges, and had become captain of the cheerleading squad. She'd maintained sporadic contact with Eric, seeing him a few times a year, but she was clear that Marcus was her dad. "Eric's my father by biology," she told her friends. "Marcus is my dad by choice." Maya had come out of her shell, joining the debate team and discovering a love for public speaking. She still made terrible jokes, but now she delivered them with confidence. Marcus and Diane still argued sometimes. They still had moments where old fears surfaced or old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But they'd learned to catch themselves, to call themselves out, to choose the family over the fear. One evening, Marcus came home from work to find Diane in the kitchen, cooking dinner while helping Maya practice a debate speech. Jasmine was on the couch, FaceTiming with Darius, showing him her college essays. The TV was on in the background, playing some show nobody was really watching. "Hey, honey," Diane said, barely looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. "Can you check if Maya's argument about climate policy makes sense? She's about to debate it tomorrow." "Sure," Marcus said, dropping his briefcase and moving to the table where Maya had her notes spread out. This was it, he thought. This ordinary, chaotic, beautiful evening. This was everything he'd thought he'd lost when Patricia died. Everything he'd been afraid to hope for when he met Diane. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Marcus and Diane sat together on their back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars. "Do you ever think about that night?" Diane asked. "The fight?" "Sometimes," Marcus admitted. "Do you regret it?" "Not exactly. I regret what I said, how I said it. But I don't regret that it happened, because I think we needed it. We needed that breaking point to realize what we were doing wrong." Marcus nodded. "Dr. Morrison said something to me once in one of our sessions. She said that sometimes the only way through something is through it. You can't go around or over. You have to walk straight through the fire." "We walked through it," Diane said softly. "We did, together." Diane leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "You know what's funny? Eric called me last week. He's having problems with his new wife, and he wanted my advice on blended families." Marcus laughed. "You're kidding." "I'm not. I told him he should get a good therapist and be willing to have his heart broken open." She smiled. "I told him it's worth it." "Is it?" Marcus asked, though he knew the answer. "Every single day," Diane said. "Even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones." They sat in comfortable silence, the night sounds of their neighborhood surrounding them. Somewhere inside, their children slept safely. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new arguments, new moments of grace and frustration. But they'd face it together, all in. No boundaries, one family. Marcus thought back to that moment in the kitchen 2 years ago, to those words that had nearly broken them. "Don't scold my daughters. Take care of your own." Now, when anyone asked Marcus about his children, he never hesitated. "I have 4 kids," he'd say. "Darius, Jasmine, Maya, and the chaos they all bring." And when people asked Diane, she gave the same answer, with the same pride, the same certainty. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in a deposition when his phone buzzed repeatedly. He ignored it until the break, then saw 5 missed calls from the high school. His heart dropped. "We need you to come get Jasmine," the vice principal said. "There's been an incident." Marcus left immediately, texting Diane on the way. She was at the hospital, but said she'd leave as soon as she could. When he arrived at the school, he found Jasmine sitting in the office, her knuckles bruised, her cheek red, mascara streaked down her face. "What happened?" Marcus demanded, looking from his daughter to the vice principal. "There was a physical altercation," Mr. Henderson said carefully, "between Jasmine and another student. She started it," came a voice from the corner. Marcus turned to see Brittany Chun, a girl from Jasmine's grade, sitting with ice on her lip. Her mother stood protectively beside her. "That's not what happened," Jasmine said, her voice shaking with anger and tears. Marcus took a breath, channeling every ounce of patience he possessed. "Jasmine, tell me what happened." "The truth." Jasmine's jaw clenched, and for a moment she looked so much like him it was startling. "She said something about Darius, about our family. She called us fake, said Darius wasn't my real brother, said you weren't my real dad, and that our family was just playing house." Fresh tears spilled over. "I told her to shut up." She kept going. "She said Maya was stupid for claiming you as her father when everyone knew you were just Mom's husband. And I shoved her." She shoved back. "Then I hit her." Marcus felt rage bloom in his chest, white-hot and protective, but he forced it down. This wasn't about his feelings. "Mr. Henderson, what does the other student say happened?" Mrs. Chun jumped in. "My daughter was simply stating facts. These girls are too sensitive about their family situation. Brittany didn't deserve to be attacked." "Facts?" Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What facts exactly was your daughter stating? That those girls have a different father, that you're not actually their father, that it's a blended family, which means..." "Which means what, Mrs. Chun?" Marcus interrupted, his lawyer voice fully engaged now. "That my daughters are somehow less than... that because their mother and I chose each other, and chose to build a family together, that our bonds are worth less than biological ones?" Mrs. Chun faltered. "I didn't say that, but you implied it. And apparently you've raised a daughter who thinks it's acceptable to weaponize a child's family structure against them." Marcus turned to the vice principal. "I'd like to see the discipline policy on bullying and verbal harassment before we discuss the physical altercation." The room went silent. Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we don't typically classify personal comments as... So if a student made comments about another student's race, religion, or sexual orientation, you wouldn't classify that as harassment?" Marcus pressed. "Family structure is a protected characteristic under the school's anti-discrimination policy. I helped write the PTA review of it last year." Diane burst through the door at that moment, still in her scrubs, slightly out of breath. "What happened? Is everyone okay?" Marcus quickly filled her in. Diane's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, fierce protectiveness, before settling into a mirror of Marcus's controlled composure. "So what you're telling me," Diane said slowly, looking at Mrs. Chun, "is that your daughter verbally attacked my daughter's family, continued after being asked to stop? And now you're surprised there were consequences?" "Physical violence is never acceptable," Mrs. Chun sniffed. "Neither is bullying," Diane shot back. "And make no mistake, that's what this was. Your daughter targeted my child's deepest insecurity, her family, and kept pushing until Jasmine snapped. I'm not saying what Jasmine did was right, Marcus added, turning to his daughter. Violence isn't the answer. You know that. Jasmine nodded miserably. But I understand why you did it. And I'm proud that you defended your family, even if you chose the wrong method. You're proud she hit my daughter? Mrs. Chun sputtered. I'm proud that after years of wondering if she truly belonged, my daughter loves this family enough to fight for it. Marcus's voice softened as he looked at Jasmine. Even if that fight should have been with words, not fists. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. Both girls will receive a 3-day suspension for the physical altercation. However, in light of the circumstances, I'll be launching an investigation into the verbal harassment that preceded it. If substantiated, there will be additional consequences for that behavior. It wasn't everything Marcus wanted, but it was something. He and Diane took Jasmine home, where Maya and a visiting Darius were waiting anxiously. I heard you knocked Brittany Chun on her butt, Darius said as soon as Jasmine walked through the door. Darius, Diane admonished. What? I'm just saying nobody talks about my little sister like that. He walked over and pulled Jasmine into a hug. You're my sister, full stop. Blood, adoption, steps, none of that matters. We're family. Jasmine started crying again, but this time from relief. Maya joined the hug, then Diane and Marcus, and they all stood in the entryway, wrapped around each other. For the record, Marcus said into the group hug, we're having a serious conversation about conflict resolution. You can't go around punching people, Jas. I know, Jasmine mumbled into his shoulder. But first, Diane added, we're going to order pizza and talk about everything you all wanted to say but didn't get to today. They spent the evening on the couches, pizza boxes open on the coffee table, talking about identity, family, belonging, and the ways the world tried to define them versus how they defined themselves. People are always going to have opinions, Marcus said. Some will think blended families are less than traditional ones. Some will think we're doing it wrong. Some will question our choices, our bonds, our legitimacy. And we say forget them, Darius added, earning a look from his parents. What? I was going to say something stronger, but I edited myself. Everyone laughed. What your brother means, Diane said, smiling, is that we don't let other people's limited understanding define our reality. We know who we are. We know what we've built. And that's enough. Is it normal to still feel weird sometimes? Maya asked quietly. Like I call Marcus Dad, and I mean it, but sometimes I wonder if I'm allowed to, because Eric is still alive somewhere. Marcus pulled Maya onto his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. You're allowed to feel however you feel, baby girl. Having Eric as a biological father doesn't cancel out having me as your dad. People have 2 parents all the time. Some people have more than 2, if we count step-parents and bonus parents. There's enough love to go around. I used to feel guilty, Darius admitted. Like I was betraying Mom by loving Diane. Like if I called Diane Mom, it meant my real mom didn't matter anymore. What changed? Jasmine asked. Therapy, mostly, Darius said with a slight laugh. But also realizing that Mom would have wanted me to have people who loved me. She wouldn't want me to be alone or closed off. She'd want me to have what I have now. Diane wiped tears from her eyes. Your mom was a good woman, Darius. I wish I could have known her. She would have liked you. Marcus said softly, and it was the first time he'd ever said anything like that out loud. Patricia was all about family, about love, about showing up. You embody all of that. The moment hung there, sacred and tender. "Okay, enough crying," Maya announced. "We're supposed to be celebrating Jasmine's suspension. We are not celebrating that," Marcus and Diane said in unison, which made everyone laugh. But in a way, they were celebrating. Not the violence, not the suspension, but what it represented. Jasmine had fought for this family because it was worth fighting for. They all had. The 3 days of suspension turned into an unexpected gift. Jasmine and Marcus spent hours together, working on college essays, talking about her future, discussing what it meant to stand up for yourself without losing yourself. Diane took an afternoon off to take Jasmine to lunch, just the two of them, where they talked about everything and nothing. On the 3rd day, Jasmine asked if they could visit Darius at Morehouse before he went back. The whole family made the drive to Atlanta, turning it into an impromptu road trip. They ate at the varsity, walked around campus, and met Darius's friends, who all seemed genuinely happy to meet his family. "Your dad is way cooler than you made him sound," one of them said. "And your sisters are nothing like you described," another added. "You said they were annoying." "They are annoying," Darius protested, but he was grinning. "They're just also pretty cool." On the drive home, with the kids asleep in the back and Diane dozing in the passenger seat, Marcus reflected on how far they'd come. From that night in the kitchen, from those cutting words, from the fear and separation that had nearly destroyed them. His phone buzzed with an email. The school had concluded their investigation. Brittany Chung would serve an additional 5 days of suspension for harassment and bullying. Her parents had been required to attend a meeting about the school's diversity and inclusion policies. It wasn't perfect, but it was accountability. Marcus forwarded the email to Diane's phone so she'd see it when she woke up. Then he turned up the music slightly, some old school R&B, and drove his family home through the night. 6 months later, Jasmine's college acceptance letters started arriving. She got into several good schools, but the one that made her cry was Spelman College in Atlanta, one of the most prestigious historically black colleges for women, and conveniently close to where Darius was. "I can't believe I got in," she kept saying, reading the letter over and over. "I can," Marcus said, beaming with pride. "You've worked incredibly hard, Jas. You deserve this." They celebrated with a family dinner at Jasmine's favorite restaurant. Eric sent a card and a check, which Jasmine accepted with a polite thank you text. He'd become a peripheral figure in her life, not absent, but not central either. He was trying in his way, but the damage of his early absence couldn't be undone, only worked around. Maya was already planning visits to see both her older siblings in Atlanta. "I'll be the cool little sister who comes to college parties," she announced. "You absolutely will not," Diane said. "When you're in college yourself, maybe," Marcus added. "And even then, only approved parties. You guys are no fun," Maya grumbled, but she was smiling. Darius raised his glass of sparkling cider. "A toast to Jasmine, who's going to be the first one in this family to go to Spelman and make us all look bad." "To Jasmine," everyone echoed, clinking glasses. "To family," Jasmine added, her voice thick with emotion. "To everyone at this table. I wouldn't be here without you guys. Any of you." Later, after the celebration died down, Marcus found Jasmine sitting on the back porch, looking at the acceptance letter again in the moonlight. "You okay, sweetheart?" "Yeah," she said, making room for him on the bench. "Just thinking about everything. About how different things are now compared to a few years ago." "Different how?" "Happier, more real. I used to think blended families were just people pretending to be related, you know? Like we were all just playing roles. But this," she gestured back at the house where Diane, Darius, and Maya were laughing over something on TV. "This is real. We're real." Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. "We are, and I'm sorry it took us so long to figure it out. It's okay. I think we all needed time." Jasmine leaned her head against his shoulder. "Dad?" "Yeah? Thanks for not giving up. On us. On this family." Even when it got hard, Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Thanks for letting me be your dad. That's been one of the greatest honors of my life." They sat there in comfortable silence. Father and daughter, chosen family, real family. The best kind of family, the kind built on effort and commitment and love that refused to quit. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the backyard of the Williams family home. Darius was getting married to Simone, a woman he'd met during his junior year at Morehouse. She was brilliant, kind, and had fit seamlessly into their chaotic family from the moment they met her. Marcus stood beside his son, straightening his tie for the 10th time. "You keep messing with it, you're going to pull it off," he said, but he was fighting tears. "I'm nervous," Darius admitted. "That's normal. I was terrified when I married your mother. And when I married Diane, any regrets?" "Not a single one." Marcus met his son's eyes. "You're about to gain a wife, Dee, and knowing Simone's family. A whole bunch of new relatives who are going to have opinions about everything. So basically what we already have?" Darius joked. "Exactly. You're prepared." Diane appeared in the doorway, looking elegant in a deep blue dress. "They're ready for you," she told Darius. Then to Marcus, "And you need to get out there. You're giving him away, remember?" Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to give him away. I just got him." "You're not giving him away," Diane said gently, crossing to them. "You're gaining a daughter. That's how family works. It just keeps expanding." Darius hugged them both. "Thanks for everything, both of you, for showing me what real marriage looks like, what real family looks like." The ceremony was beautiful. Jasmine was a bridesmaid. Maya caught the bouquet, much to her embarrassment. And when the officiant asked who gave Darius away, both Marcus and Diane stood. "We do," they said together. "His whole family." At the reception, Marcus found himself sitting with Terence and Nina, his siblings, watching the young people dance. "Remember when you called me that night?" Terence said. "After your big fight with Diane? You sounded like your world was ending." "It felt like it was," Marcus admitted. "And now look at you," Nina said, gesturing at the dance floor where Darius and Simone were surrounded by family, hers, the blended, beautiful mess of all of them together. "You built something real, big brother." "We all did," Marcus corrected. "It wasn't just me or just Diane. It was all of us choosing it every single day." Diane joined them, slightly out of breath from dancing. "Your son has terrible rhythm. I don't know where he gets it. Definitely his mother," Marcus said. Patricia couldn't keep a beat either. They all laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from shared history, from surviving hard times together, from love that's been tested and proven true. Eric showed up briefly, bringing a gift. congratulating Darius awkwardly. Jasmine introduced him to her boyfriend, a young man from Spellman's Brothers School, Morehouse. Maya gave him a polite hug. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile either. It was a biological father trying to be part of lives he'd missed too much of. When he left, Jasmine came to stand beside Marcus. "You okay with him being here?" "It's not about me," Marcus said. "It's Darius's day. If he wanted Eric here, then that's what matters. You're a good man, Dad." "I try." "No," Jasmine said firmly. You showed up. You stayed. You fought for us even when we didn't know we needed fighting for. That's what makes you our dad. Not DNA. Not marriage certificates. Choice. Every single day you chose us." Marcus pulled her into a hug, not caring that he was crying at his son's wedding. "And I'd choose you all again." Every time. As the evening wore on and the party continued, Marcus stood with Diane, watching their family. Darius and Simone starting their own journey. Jasmine and her boyfriend, young and full of possibility. Maya, now a senior in high school herself, dancing with her friends. The house full of people relatives by blood, by marriage, by choice, all woven together into something bigger than any of them alone. "You know what I realized?" Diane said, leaning in to Marcus. "What's that?" "That night when I said those words about your son and my daughters, I thought I was protecting them, but I was really just protecting myself from the possibility of loss, from vulnerability, from truly letting us all become a real family. And now? Now I know that the vulnerability is the point. The risk is what makes it real. We could have kept it safe, kept those boundaries, protected our separate territories. But we wouldn't have this." She gestured at the scene before them. "We wouldn't have built something that could hold a wedding, hold joy, hold all of us together." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "We did good, didn't we?" "We did great." Later, as Marcus gave his father of the groom speech, he looked around the room at the faces of his family, blood and chosen, biological, and blended, complicated, and beautiful. "My son once told me," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the yard, "that we were all walking around scared of losing each other again. So we kept pieces of ourselves separate, just in case. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't about keeping yourself safe from loss. It's about loving so fully that the possibility of loss is worth it. It's about showing up day after day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." He looked at Darius and Simone. "You two are starting your own family now. And it won't always be easy. You'll have moments where you question everything, where you wonder if you can make it work, where old wounds and new fears threaten to pull you apart. But if you choose each other every single day, in big ways and small, you can build something extraordinary." He raised his glass. "To Darius and Simone. To family in all its forms. To love that doesn't quit. And to second chances, third chances, and as many chances as it takes to get it right. To family." The room echoed. As everyone drank and cheered, Marcus caught Diane's eye across the room. She smiled at him, that smile that still made his heart skip after all these years. And in that smile he saw everything they'd survived, everything they'd built, and everything still to come. The night ended with everyone dancing, the old and young together, the boundaries between his family and hers long since dissolved into simply ours. Marcus pulled Diane onto the makeshift dance floor, And as they swayed to an old Marvin Gaye song, he thought about that night in the kitchen 7 years ago. Those words, "Don't scold my daughters, take care of your own," had nearly destroyed them. But in some ways it also saved them, forcing them to confront the barriers they'd built, the fears they'd harbored, the ways they'd been protecting themselves at the expense of truly becoming a family. "What are you thinking about?" Diane asked. "About how sometimes the thing that almost breaks you is the thing that makes you stronger?" "Deep thoughts for a wedding reception. It's been a deep journey," Marcus said, spinning her gently. "It has, and it's not over yet. Maya still has college to get through, grandkids someday. Probably more challenges we can't even imagine yet." "Bring it on," Marcus said confidently. "We can handle it. We can handle it," Diane agreed. Together, together. That was the word that mattered. Not his or hers, not separate or divided, but together. One family built on choice and commitment and love that refused to quit. As the music played and the stars came out and their children danced and laughed, Marcus Williams knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not because it had been easy, but because it had been worth it. Every single day, every single choice, every single moment, worth it.